Amor. After 17 years apart, thank you for bringing us together.
Welcome.
It's not his fault that we had to wait so many years.
Why didn't he come back home then?
Why are you here?
Just one dance.
We don't know each other anymore.
We lost so many years.
So, what do we do now?
This country is very hard. You always have to carry yourself a certain way. You're the only one who knows what you know and who can do what you do. So be yourself.
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. And today with AAFCA Roundtables, we have a real treat, the amazing new movie, Farewell Amor. We're talking with the leads and the creative team responsible for this award-winning film. And we're looking forward to it. Starting from my left with Brandon Avery, who this is his first time joining us, who's in Dallas, Texas.
Hello.
We have KB, who is in Houston, up the road a bit from Brandon. We have Carolyn Hinds in Toronto. We have Kim Singleton, a first-time roundtable member, calling out of New York, Harlem, New York. We have Katia in Philadelphia. We have Sharonda Williams in Atlanta. And we are good to go. I will see you guys on the other side. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Hi, it's KB here with the Color Grade podcast. How are you?
Great.
Good. Wow.
Well, I loved this film. It's really such a beautiful immigration story that really touches on our humanity and the forgiveness and redemption of just one family as they strive for the American dream. So for you, Ekwa, can you please just talk about the experience of bringing this film to life, and if it incorporated any of your own personal experiences and what it was like to premiere at Sundance?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you for all of those questions. Oh, wonderful. And thank you for having us. It was a really incredible journey bringing this film to life. It's a story that's inspired by an aunt and uncle who were married in the mid-90s, and my uncle got a student visa to come to the US. Came with every intention to bring his family right behind him, and they've been stuck in visa applications and denials for decades now. Until today, they're still applying for visas, and just kind of watching how it changed them as people, how it changed the family unit, the larger family. I was inspired to write sort of the what if story. What if Uncle finally got his visa, Auntie finally got her visa rather, and that was no longer the issue, and they were finally able to reunite. Then what happens? Where do you begin at that point? And so that was kind of an image and a thought that I had in my head of my uncle at the airport waiting for his family and having all the thoughts and feelings of like, what does he say? And will he recognize them? And what's the first meal supposed to be like? And, just all of those things. And so my producing partner and I, her name is Hurriyam Mohammed, knowing that we wanted to work towards the feature, decided to start with a short prequel film. And so we did a short called Farewell Amor, which was kind of the moment before him going to the airport and meeting his family. And from that, we were able to sort of gather support and momentum behind the feature. So spent a year pitching the project, a year and a half writing the project, at the same time, as we were pitching, we were actually working on the script. And then we got into Sundance, into some of their development programs, and that definitely helped to raise the money and the support that we needed. And then, I mean, this time last year, we shot for 5 weeks last summer in New York. Thank God, given the year that we've had. And this time last year, we had just found out that we got into Sundance. So we were pulling our hair out, trying to finish the edit. And literally we finished like 6 days, like a week before our premiere. So the premiere at Sundance was really strange, because we had been in dark rooms for about 2 months watching the film, but had not been in dark rooms with a lot of people before. And when you make these kinds of films, and certainly one that's so personal, it felt like a very personal sort of story that, my actors understood and my little crew understood, but to be able to show it to an audience and have that many people, and not just Black people, not just African people, but, from all over the world, like respond and really feel connected to the story and moved by the story was incredible. And certainly a very large part of that has to do with the wonderful cast that I had and what they were able to bring in order to bring those characters to life.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, all of your love and all of your care and just everything really shines through with this film. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Carolyn Hinds, First Here's What Happened podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. And I have to thank all 3 of you for this film, because I'm an immigrant and I'm Barbadian, and I've been living in Toronto for 11 years, 2 days ago, actually. It's today, because it's November 12th. Today is 11 years that I've been in Toronto. And and I've been watching a lot of films that has been referring to immigration and that kind of stuff. And this film really touched me, especially for Ntare and Jayme's characters and how they bonded as father and daughter through their love of music and dance, and how that connected them to their culture and their heritage back home. So I wanted to ask you and the 2 of you about developing that bond through music and dance, because as Black people, that's something that it's inherently and intrinsically a part of us. So just about doing that and finding your place through that music.
I'll kick it off. Yeah, one of my favorite moments filming was definitely the scene in the makeshift bedroom where Ntare is speaking to me and just telling me, giving me permission to be myself, right, through dance. And this goes back to what Ekwa was saying about the what if, what if her uncle did get to be reunited with his family, and for Sylvia, how many years has she spent wondering, what is it going to be like to see this man that I've never met before in person, and who I'm supposed to have all this love and reverence for, but I don't actually know what that's like, and all the mixed emotions that she has about him. And then for him to give her that permission, right, for her to be seen by him in that way, is one of the most tender moments that we get with the 2 of them. And is essential to see how Sylvia is in fact Walter's daughter, right? We get to see, oh, that's something that has survived even without human connection. And that's one of the beautiful moments of the film, to really just be seen in that way from this man that she's wanted to have that loving relationship with. So anytime we got to, even when we were in the hospital and we were joking, he was joking about him dancing, and those moments were just really amazing to feel and go through, in far as tracking their relationship and their connectivity. Yeah,
I think she hit it right on the head. It was perfectly said. That was really one of the highlights. That scene when we were trying to encourage her to fly, basically. And what's so great about this relationship is that they're really meeting for the first time in the movie. Because when he left, she was just a 1-year-old baby. And so he's meeting this person for the first time and trying to figure out and navigate this relationship with an adolescent who's trying to find their own independence. He's trying to give them space, trying to give her space, at the same time trying to get to know her. So it was a really, interesting balancing act, which was a great counterpoint to what we had with the wife, played by Zainab, because they've known each other, but they've changed so much. So it was great, the way that Ekwa shaped this piece, that we get to see someone trying to reconnect with someone who they've known intimately who's changed, and someone trying to reconnect with someone who they have actually really only known in their imagination, basically. And what's so beautiful is that they have this, when you see yourself in your child, and you want to you're proud and you're thrilled at that. At the same time, you don't want to force anything, but then sometimes they may go in a different direction than you are, and it's leading them down the wrong path. They're meeting boys, and you're trying to pull them back, but there's nothing you can do. The more you try to fight it, the more you try to fight it, the worse it gets. So it was interesting trying to the hands-off balance, and I think that's what Ekwa did really well, because when the mom catches Jayme's character with a boy in their bedroom, that was fire. You see the mom was gonna lay the hammer down, and when she calls the dad, he's just like, they're teenagers, they're gonna do it, So it was just really great to have that different approach and window into parenthood.
Kim Singleton, host of the television show Consider It Blacklit out of New York City. And I saw this film in Sundance and absolutely loved it. Of all the films that I saw at Sundance, this is the one that I brought back with me to New York City, because the characters touched me so much. I felt this film clearly showed a man's commitment to his family, even to the sacrifice to himself. He clearly loved Linda, but his commitment outweighed everything else. So my question is, what lessons do you think a young man can learn from this, or what message can they take away in terms of commitment to family?
I think that relationships are complicated, and I think that marriages are complicated, and as much as it's sort of assumed, or there's so much rhetoric, maybe I should say, around oh, men are dogs and they all have affairs, and then the minute you let them out, they're just gonna XYZ. And I actually grew up surrounded by men who were not that. Not to say that everyone's perfect and everyone was pious or whatever, but it's just so much more complicated than just bored men having bored sex with bored women elsewhere instead of looking after their families. And that's important to me in terms of not just for you can do it, guys, you too can be family people, but I do think that there is something very damaging where when we see our people constantly sort of not connected, and not able to connect in loving ways, not how what does that mean when we see so much sex, but how much of it is consensual, or all of it is just about sort of hot body parts, but it's not about actual intimacy or connect, I feel that gives us the message, all of us, men and women, the message that we don't do that, and that's not true. And so it was actually very important for me to have a couple that are going after each other, regardless of whether we think they're succeeding or not, and that there's this man who genuinely loves his family. He just doesn't know them. And he's had this connection with this woman, and it's a real connection. He really, and I think at the end, you actually, you're man, there was so many Team Lindas, because you almost want him to stay with her in some regard, but then you also really want him to stay with them, so So you can kind of feel the pull and push for him, but just the relationships between men and women. Well, it doesn't have to be men and women. It could be women and women, men and men too. But like for Black people, for us to be able to relate to each other in a loving, consensual manner, I feel like we need a lot more of that. And it doesn't always have to be in the guise of sort of like holy matrimony, church style or whatever. Like it's complicated. That's how I feel. I don't know, Ntare, you might have something else to say about it.
No, I think what you did with the story was really beautiful in the sense that you showed that it's possible to love two people at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
And that at a certain point you have to make a choice because it's not fair to both or to yourself. And
Yes.
we see Walter really wrestling with that, you know, the whole thing you have with the sheets, the symbolism with the sheets, and he can't let go of the sheets, and he tries to put them out, but then the wife brings them back into the bedroom, and you know, it's just like they can't let it go. And so I think you had this great metaphor of like what it is to have something, to have this love that you can't let go, that you're still longing for. And I'm sure there's people, we all have loves in our lives we've lost that might still haunt us. And it's often hard to put that away. And I think that you captured that really well in the story. But ultimately what he has to do is he has two other beautiful women in his life, his wife and his daughter. And he knows that this is going to tear them apart if he's divided, his heart is divided. And so he has to step up and stand up. I don't think Linda would have settled for it either way. And so she kind of kicked him to the curb after he said, this is what I'm trying to do. And I mean, he did say, why can't we be friends? She was like, no, and takes that necklace off and throws it at him. But if she said, okay, it might have been a different story. So it takes two to tango. I know he had to step up, but sometimes it's easy to fall into the traps of, you know, when the heart is entangled, sometimes it's hard to untangle one's heart. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the movie, is it shows how that can be complicated to do.
Great, great. It was beautifully done. Great job, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How you all doing? My name is Brandon Avery with Just My Opinion Reviews in Dallas. I want to thank all of you for being here. I really do appreciate it. And also congratulations on this whole film, Ekwa, and all the awards. And I love the film. I thought the performances were great across the board. But something that really stood out to me in the middle of the film, in Ntare, there was a line of dialogue that you delivered to your daughter, Sylvia, saying that in this country, in America, for Black people, it can be really difficult, especially for foreigners, and that how we Black people often have to go around and carry ourselves in a way that's not threatening to white people. I think that we can all relate to, you know, to that in some form or fashion. So my question is not just to you, Ntare, to all of you, whoever wants to answer. Throughout your whole filmography and television and films, you know, all you guys' filmography is very diverse. Do you find yourself in Hollywood on these TV shows and movies to where you still constantly have to walk on eggshells around white people and not come across threatening? And if so, like, what are some ways, if you can possibly talk about how you overcome that?
I recently graduated from a predominantly white institution. So even though I'm fairly new to the industry, I have been pre-exposed to whiteness. So having to navigate that was tricky, especially because I got into school when I was 17 and, you know, I'm still finding myself. And I came from a predominantly Black high school, performing arts high school, Duke Ellington in DC. And so making that transition was kind of jarring, right? And how do I navigate my body in space as one of two Black women in my group, right? How do I, where there's not many allies, how do you create your own safe space? How do you protect yourself, but yet also be vulnerable enough in your artistry to grow, to stretch, to share? And I've learned that it's actually more daring my colleagues to be uncomfortable daring them to just deal with me in my totality, and like confront their own opinions. Like if that scares you, then okay, be scared and then get over that and deal with it.
Love that.
And I found that actually by not tiptoeing so much, one, I'm not bound and I'm not having to deal with so much internal monologues on a daily basis. But then two, that challenge to my white counterparts is actually helpful for both of us, right? We're getting past all the guck and like getting just down to the realities of situations, and it's profited more conversations now, and giving me the courage to speak up for what I care about, and really be an advocate in the audition rooms, in the meetings with producers, like just not trying to play the game anymore. I think enough amazing people have come before me who have played that game so that I don't have to. And coming into that era right now, it's quite refreshing. It's scary, but it is refreshing to be like, okay, that's the torch that's being passed right now. That's the charge that's happening right now. Yeah, that's my little 2 cents on that.
We got a late join from Zainab. I don't know if you want to. We haven't heard. Hello.
Hi, Zainab.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
All right.
Shenanigans in the basement.
Welcoming you in. Not pointing out you were late. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Ntare.
Well, I think Brandon, just to chime in, that moment in the movie is, I think he's also the moment where he's encouraging her, trying to give her the wings to fly, and it's in reference to that dance competition. And I think what's so great, which the film doesn't really, because it's an insular story about this family, and we don't really deal with the greater ramifications of being, of race, I don't think, until that particular moment, really. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ekwa.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so I think that moment really was just like sort of tipping a hat to the bigger world that we're living in. But it's not like a nailing it on the head kind of thing, but just like, and it's done with, I think the same way like my parent did. I think it's different from an immigrant's, is it like, to get the difference between an immigrant's way of trying to tell the narrative of being in a minority in a white world, and the African American. I think there's a difference. And I think for myself, the one thing that is across the board for both worlds is that you have to be better. I think regardless of whether you're an immigrant or you're an African American first generation, or you've been in your generations, it's like you have to be 10 times better. Or my dad, you have to be 10 times better than them.
That's more like it.
And so at that point, that's what happens. But I think there's a difference. I know for myself as growing up, I don't know if it's because I was an immigrant, but I was never taught about, my parents never had the conversation about, the driving, being pulled aside, we have to do. That wasn't a conversation. That wasn't a part of our, our universe that we were like, at that point, I guess, there weren't the cell phone video recordings of all this all the time. There were certain things that we just didn't learn because my parents weren't from this country. So there's certain things that are missed in translation when you're trying to bring up your kid in this world that you just don't know about.
Right.
So I think that's what Ekwa did in that point, where she's pointing out that there's this issue, this wider world that you're living in, but it doesn't go into like all the atrocities.
Right.
But it just says, look, you are better than, you are the brightest shining star. You have a long history, and don't let anything hold you back. Just go and sail. And, it could have been a different story. But I think that's what's so beautiful about the way she did it. And I think that's, I'm just repeating myself in terms of, I saw Zainab nodding her head, maybe she can chime in about how that as an immigrant, that you hear these, a different sort of perspective sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I mean, like you said, for me, thinking about what you're saying, it's a particularly female point of view too that Ekwa wrote, because I grew up in London in a Sierra Leonean family, immigrant family, and we also got the conversation, you have to be better than them, or mainly, you're going to be a doctor whether you like it or not. That is what you're going to do. You have no decision, no choice in this. But we never got that particular conversation, that particular talk that you get here, and specifically because I come from a family of girls. I'm like one of 5 girls. So it's a different conversation I think you would have with your female children, your girl children than you would with your boy children, I think. And Ekwa has written it from a particularly a woman's point of view, speaking to a girl. I wonder, I'm sure it would be a different conversation had Sylvia been Silvio. You know what I mean? It would have been a different conversation, because and so like you were saying, I also, coming here to this country and even living in England, there's certain nuances in the conversations that people have with their children growing up and navigating the space that I missed, and to this day still missed. And little things that, like, this maybe not have anything to do with what we're saying, but I was just listening to the Colson Whitehead book the other day called Sag Harbor. I have lived in this country over 15 years, and there's a section where he talks about W.D. Du Bois. That was the first time I've heard it pronounced that way, because in my mind, all my life, I've always said Dubois. And it was literally 2 days ago, I was walking down the street and I'm like, wait, it's Du Bois? And the chapter dealt with not admitting that you don't know something, because he was, as a child growing up, his parents would mention these people and he'd say, who are they? And they would look at him like, how do you not know these people? How do you not know these nuances, these historical things, these layers of who we are and how we moved through this country? And you're from here, and it's the same thing that continues to happen with me personally. And I would say that particular moment is like, I love that Walter is trying so hard to say, there are things you just don't know, because I probably don't know either. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, it's different. Just be careful, be aware of that.
Thank you all. I really do appreciate it, and congratulations again. And Jayme, I look forward to the Batman.
Hey, yes.
Hey. Hey everybody, my name is Katya Woods, Couple Soul Show out of Philadelphia. There are so many things I loved about this movie, but Brandon stole my thunder a little bit, but most importantly that Black people are global. I too immigrated to the United States like 30 years ago. I came here as a child. And the portion of the movie that spoke to me is the correlation between Angola, the Portuguese, because my family's from Brazil. So I grew up speaking Portuguese before I spoke English. And the synergy of people don't talk about it enough, even though our politics are different, but we have a close relationship with our Angolan brothers and sisters. Talk about that aspect, because again, when we speak of Black people, unfortunately in this country, African Americans tend to think that is the only Black experience, that and then the continent, in terms of like just everybody is one size fits all in Africa, but not understanding that because of colonization, there are countries who unfortunately now speak French first, Spanish, and in Angola's case, Portuguese. Talk about why that was important for you to show that aspect of the immigration story.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, Angola to me, initially the idea about having Angola be part of the story was really had to do with the dance and the music, which I'm a very big lover and practitioner of, Kizomba and Kuduro. And it's such beautiful music that, because of language, because of whatever reasons, like is just not very popular in the US. And so I really wanted to showcase that, but also the specificities of the dance itself, and the dance as a metaphor for connection or lack thereof. Kizomba, which is the style of dance that Walter's character, Ntare's character dances to, is a couple's dance that's very beautiful, very sensual. Most people don't think of beautiful, sensual dances coming out of Africa. They think of sort of like individual dances to drums, which is great. We do a lot of those too. But it's also the kind of dance that does not have a regular foot pattern. And so in order to be led or lead in Kizomba, you actually do have to have some sort of connection to your partner in order to know which way you're going. And if you don't have connection, you can't dance. And so the metaphor for this couple that used to dance and have literally lost their connection and are trying to find it in order to follow or lead in this relationship, I thought was really beautiful. And then for Kuduro, which is the style that Sylvia's character practices, is, you know, so more of like a hip hop style. You know, it's from the streets. It's hot, it's energetic, but it speaks to a lot of the things that young people are facing in Angola, you know, coming out of a 30-year civil war. And it's like Luanda, which is the capital city, is like one of the richest cities in the world, but has like the highest levels of poverty at the same time. And Angola as a country has immense wealth, like huge, like diamonds and oils and all of this stuff. And so, and the, you know, and so all what the young people don't have a voice, and the way that they are able to express themselves is with their body. And I feel like Black people all over the world actually do that. We are very expressive people. Even when we speak with our hands and our faces and, you know, just like all of the elements. And so being able to bring those things to the story was really important for me. But also specifically when kind of what you touched on, like the history of those countries. I mean, that Congo Angola area, I mean, that is Wakanda for real, not just in terms of like the riches and the promise and the wealth that was stolen, blah, 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 which is all true. But even in terms of like the first Black people, you know, when we talk about like the 1619 project that, you know, came out last year, those early Africans who came to the US are from that Congo Angola area, you know, and, you know, because of the popularity of Ifa and Yoruba culture and like all of these different things, we tend to only think about West Africa and like Ghana and Gold Coast and that kind of thing. But the first Africans actually were from Congo Angola area. The Cold War, which is a huge event that, you know, Americans are constantly talking about, the Cold War. The Cold War was not fought in the US, it was fought in Africa, in Angola, because of Angola's wealth, you know, and like there's this faction of the Cubans were backed by the USSR, and then Americans were backing the Congolese and other people. And that is 30-year civil war. And what happened to those people coming out of that who we never speak about because they speak a different language. And so it's not really top of mind at all. And yet there is this immense beauty and culture that comes out of our suffering, which is true for all Black people. The immense like art that we're able to make from our struggles. And also, you know, just like, it's just so easy as somebody who has tried, who's like sort of made it my focus to represent and tell stories about African heritage people and from the continent in particular, where we just kind of get lumped together and just like throw some bright clothing and have some clicking language and we're all good. And it's like, we're so specific, even within like the one country. Like we really have a lot, like you cannot have a movie about Somalis and just put any brown face on there because they look a particular way, they speak a particular way, they have a particular history, etc. And so wanting to show more than, you know, the African accent, you know, all of the actors spent 3-4 weeks working with dialect coaches to learn. You know, I wasn't able to make the whole film in Portuguese, and I also don't speak Portuguese, but I was like, all right, well, at the very least, we're going to sound like we do. And so you know, we did that and translated some of the phrases into Portuguese, and just like, and all of them, you know, were watching the history of the country, you know, like documentaries, so that they came to the story with some sort of knowledge as to who they were representing, because it's important. And we have so much diversity that is like beautiful and important even to America, whether America knows it or not. You know, folks will catch up at some point, but it was important to me.
No, the Portuguese was spot on. Like I was laughing at the expressions. It's things we say in Brazil. So it was like, I totally got it. You know what I mean? So definitely, but it was so beautiful to see. And I hope people understand that our immigration process here in the United States is bigger than our Mexican brothers and sisters, that it is a problem, period. But thank you again for this film. And I absolutely love that.
So you're fluent in Portuguese, Katia?
Sing, yeah, because my grandparents certainly didn't speak English. A little bit of Spanish, and to make matters even crazier, I was born in Munich, Germany, so they definitely did not speak German. So it was either going to be 3 months of us staring at one another, or my mother was like, you have to learn Portuguese.
Figure it out.
And imagine 3 months, we're trying to communicate food, everything. And the peace offering between my grandparents and I, believe it or not, I think was like around, my mom said around 2.5, was French bread. To this day, it's still one of my favorites. So that was our come to Jesus moment, and we go from there.
Well, that is incredible, because in the script originally we didn't have any Portuguese, and I was pushing to try to like have scenes in Portuguese, and the big battle was like, it's not going to, as much as you want to have that, you're not going to be able to sound like you really speak Portuguese, and then it's going to ruin it, or it's going to take us out. Because so for you who's fluent, to say that resonated for you is really like a relief.
Right? No, it did. I was like, oh, I know what he's saying, you know? But it was good. Like I said, I'm so glad you made this. And I hope, again, people are inspired to learn more about Angola and other parts of Africa. Like you said, we're not like shoes. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's huge. Really, you don't understand, because we had weeks of like, let's do it. No, let's not do it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Sharonda Williams from Pay Your Weight. Ekwa, I wanted to ask you this question because I had the chance to actually see this film at Sundance with Katia. And one of the things that truly speaks to me is when we talk about immigration in the country, and as Katia was mentioning that, you know, I love that this is an African immigrant story, right? But most importantly, outside of the complexities between the family dynamics with mom and daughter and father, and then I really love that you showcase the fears, you know, the reservations about coming to a new place. You know, with everything that's happening surrounding this topic, we talk about the implications for the people that's already living here, right? How we will be affected if other immigrants come in. But I really wanted to know specifically for you, from a writing standpoint, how important was for you to really show, you know, with Sylvia's interaction with kids at school, or Esther really just trying to navigate getting around the neighborhood? I really wanted you to speak to the importance of including that in the script for this film.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as an immigrant myself, and, you know, hearing the hopes and dreams of so many others who one day we'll get to America, and just like all the promise, and, you know, we watch BET and MTV and like all of these things that are supposed to symbolize what are big fancy, like we're all gonna live in like MTV crib style houses, and like, you know, making it rain all day long. And it's just like, no, not really. You know, so people have these like grand ideas of like what American life is going to be like. And, you know, and for this family in particular, I just imagine, because they've been on this like any minute now sort of pattern for years, that there's been so much sort of hype around like, it's gonna be great, and education is free, and you're gonna be a doctor, and, you know, like all of that kind of stuff. And just how many people I know who've come and realized that it's a struggle like anywhere else, but it's also different because you don't have your family, and you don't have the things that you're used to, and the people that, you know. I remember as an immigrant myself coming to the US at, you know, around the same age that Sylvia's character was, which was 17, and just being really confused about homeless people and homelessness, and how, I'm like, how are you reading and writing and you're homeless? Because to me, homeless people, it's like, you have like absolutely no resources, and you don't have the skills to find any kind of employment. my brother, who's lived in the States for a lot longer, had to explain to me, it's like, well, this is a country where it's actually very easy to be homeless. Like you miss one bill and you're out on the streets. And like understanding capitalism and poverty and how that works, especially for people of color, was just, and I was just kind of like, but do they not have family? Like, is there nobody that people can move in? Like what? You know, because it's just a different setup. And so, and specifically, you know, especially in the past 4 years with all of the rhetoric around immigrants and like go back home and they're all murderers and killers and rapists. And, you know, there's been so much focus on all of the resources that immigrants take from the country, and like they're here to harm us and injure us and take our social security and all of this stuff. And we never talk about what people give up to come to the US. I don't think that there's anybody in the world who would prefer to live in a foreign land among strangers and struggle, as opposed to living with people that they love and, you know, and that are connected to. Like nobody does that because it's fun. People do that out of necessity and because they want a better life for themselves and their kids. And the whole better life thing, for a lot of people, especially for those of us from developing countries, the whole reason most of us are immigrants in the first place is because capitalism and, you know, Western capitalism has made our own home countries inhabitable, you know, like have put in policies and all these other things where we can't find jobs in our own country. So we have to come to your country and work and do these things and then, you know, be villainized. And so, you know, and just like thinking about like immigrants as people who are not only giving up things in order to be there, but also bringing gifts with them as immigrants, you know, and not just bringing the problems and diseases, but Ebola, but like actually bringing like resources and wealth and knowledge and culture and like all these other things. And so just trying to like flip the story on who immigrants are.
Yeah, and even if the cast wanted to add anything just about the importance of telling these stories, especially African stories, and having films like this, because I think, especially in the US, we kind of lose the African identity, you know, where we come from, where our ancestors come from, and just really the importance in being a part of such an important film like this and being able to continue adding to this catalog of African stories in the US.
I think it's a beautiful coincidence, or no coincidence at all, that our first African-American president, our first African-American vice president are also immigrants. You know, they came from immigrant background, but we're all in this country, for all of us who are in the States, we're all immigrants. The only original people were the Native Americans. But to see that that's so recent for those two, that they're first generations, just really shows the wealth and the talent that comes from people who are, you know, come in and shaped and nurtured, but have that outside perspective as well. So I think it's such an exciting time, and such an exciting time for the story to be shared, because these stories are, as much as they're trying to be silenced, they can't be silenced because they're forefront. Yeah, as much as you want to deny, it can't be denied. It's there, you know. And I'm so proud that my daughter's already imitating Kamala. It's like so great that, you know, for the next 4 years, or perhaps even longer, that will be a new role model for her.
Well, you know, we can't thank you enough for participating today in Roundtable. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, we'd like to thank you. Know that we will continue to watch you and support you in whatever you're doing. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you for another edition of AAFCA Roundtables.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.